that's a triple play. New episodes, I couldn't wait. Yeah, open your mind at the first gate. Press play, no need to debate. AoA, check me out. Look, clocked in, you can catch the hype. Golden Dawn, how we follow the light. Anime like life, married to it, my wife.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages? Welcome back to the AoA show. I'm your host, as always, Ian, along with my boy, Isaiah.
Yo, yo, yo.
And today, we are here to talk about Noblesse Episode 5. This one is titled A Friend's Hand / Fight For. Our thoughts on it, more of a deep dive, predictions. Did we like it? Did we not? What did we take issue with? What did we really like within the episode? As always, folks, if you guys enjoy the content today, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, sharing with your friends, and commenting your thoughts down below. What did you think of this episode of Noblesse? What are your thoughts on Noblesse as a series thus far? And what were your thoughts on our discussion of it? Also, if you want to support the channel, you can hit us up in our description where we have links to every way that you can support the show, whether it is through our merch shop, through our Patreon, through our social media, or through our Discord. They are there for you as well. But without further ado, let's get into our thoughts on this. So kind of the whole episode, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is them in the basement cellar building thing, right. The entire time. So we're going kind of through the thoughts, more specifically, I would say, of M-21. Gets more of the character development here, and then his relationship with name evades me, but the young noble. I'm going to call him Young Noble. Who is captured there as well because they have their beef with one another. So yeah, that's really it. We have our main, I guess, antagonist here the entire time is Shark, the guy who just never shuts up and carries a blade. And it's interesting. I have to say with this, this episode and the one prior, this whole team dynamic between like the metahumans or whatever that you want to call them, right? These superhumans has been just kind of wonky from the start. They seem to be this like very coherent team that synergizes well with one another, and they're all under the leadership of the main guy and all that kind of stuff. But as the show went on, and what I mean by that is in these past two episodes, you really get the feeling that they're not so much of a cohesive team in any way, shape, or form. They're pretty disjointed in their own way. They're all just individually very badass. Yeah. And we really see that come to fruition. But like, to bring kind of the last episode into it, I thought it was weird how like we get this short junction of the guy with purple hair, long purple hair. He's got this thing with his sister, the whole nine. It seems like he almost doesn't even want to be doing this. So it's like, okay, is this a thing just for your sister, like to be a better person in general? Or are you trying to infiltrate this organization and get something out of it? Right, or do you think that you need to become more powerful in order to achieve other said goals? So you're willing to sacrifice some of that humanity? Or like maybe now you're just having second thoughts? Like, I'm confused. What's your story, bro? And then the other hacker guy, like last episode really threw me off because it's like, yo, we should meet up in person to like this, to this kid that they're like hacking back and forth. And it's like, bro, don't you have like a serious mission here? And then he's like, there's like this weird, I dare say maybe even love interest thing going on. And that's usually not me to be like the second two characters have a conversation, be like, ship them, right? I actually can't stand that sect of the anime community that just immediately ships people like from a conversation. But I have to say their conversation was like definitely teetering towards that edge of either infatuation or it was just so like utmost respect from dude, I am so sorry, I'm forgetting everyone's name now. We literally watched the episode before, then did a live stream and we're here and everyone's name is shot. I'm gonna have a phone, so I apologize for this. I'll be better with that next time. But our the human kid with the glasses, some with an M, is like so struck by the hacker from that squad from Team D or whatever. So that was just like, it was really weird, and it was giving me these vibes of like, okay, there's a crack here in the seams, but it's like I didn't even feel like the team was established before I already see the cracks in it type thing. So it didn't really like strike me as like, oh, okay, like I guess these guys are the next fodder. Like maybe they're the Jake, I think his name was, and his sidekick or whatever. But then we really see that this episode because it's just everyone's like doing their own thing, right? It's like the only two that seem to have any sort of allegiance towards each other are Hammer and Shark. That's it, right? Because they're kind of like a squad all the time, and they're like, are we the only ones that like being evil for the sake of being evil here and not trying to screw everyone over besides the leader guy, which we see later? Because everyone else has like some wonky stuff going on, and like I don't think this is the best conducive strategy to this team, and it's really just laid bare because it's like the whole I get the suspense, and it's like, you know, we're getting these like I get these like One Punch Man vibes where it's like, okay, we clearly know. At least I assume the episode does end, and they might throw something in there. But I'm assuming, based off power level and scaling that we've seen so far, that Rai really doesn't have any sort of issue with dealing with any of these people. He might have some issue with the guy at the end, the leader. But, like, he's just up here. You know what I mean? Everybody else is, like, here. So it's really just like a waiting game for him to get there. But it did seem like it was just incredibly dragged out in the episode, like, for that obvious reason, right? Where it was like the leader guy's just standing there, like, you know, and it's like, bro, you're on this mission. M-21's clearly not giving you this info by this point. So you're literally going to hold a knife to his neck and be like, you're going to give it to me now or I'm going to stay. But he's like, no, let it go. You know what I mean? And there's all this like internal strife. Don't kill him. That's too much. And I'm like, did anyone read the pamphlet before we captured these guys on like how to handle a hostage situation 101? Because like nobody's on the same page here. And to be frank, the leader of Team D is not doing jack shit, which makes sense later because he didn't really give a shit about any of them to begin with. But he's just like, screw it. Now's going to be the plan, whatever. But it was just wild, and like I just like felt like that team was just so disorganized and like just all over the place. And I'm curious to see where we go from here in terms of, you know, I know it's weird for me to jump the gun even ahead of episode 5. It's weird. We're talking about episode 5, but I feel like I've talked about things that aren't even episode 5. But it's like I can't help but think I'm like, all right. I understand they work for the organization, so these guys aren't the end-all, be-all, and clearly there's people higher up the chain, and I don't know if it's just going to be a matter of like, oh, these guys died, let's send like the next badass team, or like let's send the next one, let's send Team A, or whatever. Right. I don't know if it's going to be that, but it just seemed like Team D's inclusion, if they do get wiped out, which my prediction is that the purple hair guy, or maybe the guys that were like siding with them might not. They might, include them in their squad, which though, to be honest, their squad's getting a little big right now. Like, I don't know how many more people they could have on board before it's just like ridiculous. They have a whole raid party with them. Like, how do they lose? But, my prediction is maybe one of them will live or whatever. And then we get the next people. But it was just like their whole dynamics screw me up. And that's my rant for the beginning of this episode. I'm sorry. I just had to like, I don't even know what to think. Like, I didn't even get into the episode. Like, I'm sorry, but go ahead. Like, what do you got? What do you got for me?
I agree with pretty much everything you said. It felt weird to me that we get into this episode and, you know, from the jump, we sort of establish what's going on here, right? You've got you and, you know, the kid with glasses whose name's
I'm going to look up names while you're talking, so I'm listening.
Who are kidnapped and held hostage in this warehouse, and Team D is basically using this for M-21 to get information from him. But you're right. It very early on in the episode, it feels pretty established that it's like, all right, regardless what M-21 says or chooses here, he's clearly not like keen on and trying his damned hardest not to give you guys this information you want. Sure. So like, it's time to switch the interrogation tactics from like gentle to rough, like, because at this point, we are, and like once we get the whole thing of like the woman whose name is also evading me, when she's having a conversation with Frankie and
I have her name. Yeah. Just ironically is Seira Seira Seira.
Sarah. Okay.
Sarah. Yeah, whatever.
Once Sarah is talking to Ryan and Frankie, and she's like, "Oh, you know what? Like, because obviously she doesn't know that they're superpowers or that they're meta." She's like, oh, you know what? You guys don't even, like, all this must sound ridiculous to you guys. I'm just going to go. And then she goes off to handle their thing, or to go save them, or at least the young noble kid. And Ryan and Frankie, of course, are like, oh, fuck, we got these guys tangled up in our shit again. Like, let's go save them. But it's like, instead of Frankie and Rye either A, busting in there, you know, maybe like not frame one, but like maybe like a couple minutes later and just kind of saving them, there's like this weird long amount of tension that's built up to like, I guess, them coming in to save them. And of course, so when they get there, Frankie gets stopped right by the guy with the purple hair. He's like,
Takeo, by the way, Takeo.
Takeo. Gets stopped by Takeo, and Frankie's like, Master, go inside. I'll be in with you quick. But it's like, okay, all of like, it feels like that moment that like Frankie and Rye realizing what's happening, going to save them and stuff, happens in like 5 minutes, or like could, right? A maximum of 10 minutes. It's 5 minutes to do the thing, and then another 5 minutes to clean up this mess and get everybody out of here. but like the episode's 20 minutes long. So it feels like there's so much time of like everybody in that warehouse, like nobody really willing to commit to any sort of decision. So it ends up feeling like this weird game of like, you know, still air and tension where it's like, oh man, I could just kill these guys, but if I do, like, the plot has to move forward. Or it's like like you said, the leader, he's watching basically all of his subordinates not like argue with each other and not agree on one plan on how to move forward. What I forget the guy's name who with the knife.
Shark.
That
got his
yeah.
Yeah.
He all the time is like, every time he like goes to do something or says something, like turns to the leader for confirmation. He's like, you think we should do this, right? And the leader's just like, do it. And it's like, but then Shark won't do it because either A, he can't because we need those characters can't die because of the plot, or B, somebody has to have like a character. It just felt like nothing was working in service of the plot and it was working against it. Like everybody in that warehouse was doing their damnedest to stop. It felt like every character in the warehouse knew the fact that this episode had to run for 22 minutes, but like their shit only would have lasted 5. So like they had to stall. And so it just, this weird feeling. I remember even if you guys watch our reaction video, when we were watching it of just being like, and no, okay, no, there's still, oh, okay, now he's good. Oh no, he's okay. Oh, okay. And then at one point I'm like, right, just bust in here and whoop these niggas' ass so we can call it a day. Like it was very, it just felt very not good, at least as far as like construction of an episode, like how the plot and how the pacing went. Again, this isn't our first rodeo, right? This is Webtoon 3 that's been adapted to an anime. I know the stakes here. I know that whatever the actual story is had to be condensed for, you know, into 13 or however many episodes they have. So I know we're not running like with, you know, the A+ version of this story, I guess, let's say. But like, it just blows my mind when these, and you know, I don't want to speak too ahead of myself in terms of how the rest of the show will pace itself, because maybe it'll correct itself in the next episode or, you know, a couple episodes down, whatever. But to get like stuff like this, which is just so wildly out there, like not look good in terms of like, wow, like why do you guys do? Because I get it if it's like, again, you know, and just referencing this because it's some similar situation with the Webtoon thing, the Tower of God anime, where it's like, you know, to me personally, things were cut, but it was like character conversations and information that like was not vital to understand how the pacing of the story went. I know some people, there are certain things that I guess some people who are, you know, been fans for much longer were like, well, why would you just put that in there? How could you take that out of? But it's like, again, compared to Tower of God, something like, I don't even want to say like the whole entirety of Noblesse, because Noblesse is kind of a weird beast in itself in the fact that it's not starting from the jump. Like there's other stuff that you catch up on and you can sort of just jump into this guns blazing. But like when I was watching this episode, the whole time I just couldn't help but think like, why is like nothing moving? Like nothing's happening. Yeah. And there's this weird standstill here because we have Ryan and Frankie who like need to come here and be the heroes, right, and do the thing where they save everybody. But then it leans back into that thing you were saying before about like the rest of the cast expanding too much. It's like, well, what the fuck is everybody else doing here? Because I get that M-21, who by the way I do very much like as a character, and I like the moment that he has in this episode.
I do too.
But like M-21 has this moment and it like virtually means nothing because we have the young noble who steps up and is like, oh, well, then I'm going to save you too. By the way, who broke out of these handcuffs.
Regis, by the way. Regis.
Regis, okay. Mm-hmm. Who broke out of those handcuffs that I guess were actually not a problem until he got his Zenkai boost. So that's convenient. But like, and then I'm like, okay, that's cool. But like, in line with M24 and his sacrifice, like the whole point in my head of like that moment with M21 was that like, he's to stand his ground and like protect these kids because now he has a reason, he has something that he wants to keep, like this promise on his end. And he even says it like when he has a vision of all his friends, all the people that were in the lab and stuff, he's like, I'll explain myself to you guys in hell, right? Where he's like, all right, I can't really explain in words right now like why I feel this way and why I want to do this, but I have to do this. I have to keep this promise. But it just feels like that moment, once it's dragged out to like 19 to 20 minutes, it like loses a little bit of its luster, only for Rye to come in at the end and it's like, okay, this is the moment we were waiting for to begin with. It gets to this point where like Frankie and Rye are such strong characters that like it would take a lot for any of the other characters to really be able to build up like any of this amount of luster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when I think it was episode 3, right? When M21 like first comes to the school and like, you know, starts living or, you know, gets the whole thing to live with Frankie and stuff, right? Or is that episode 2?
It might have been 2 when he gets to live with Frankie, because I think
Yeah.
he's working there from the rip from the first episode.
Yeah,
If I'm not mistaken, yeah, but
okay.
I don't know if
So
he
I think
lives
it's
with him yet.
Episode 2, the one where he like stands up, where he like
Yeah,
fucks
I'm
with
pretty
the
sure
bully.
it's 2.
It's like in that moment you establish that, okay, Frankie and Rye are super strong characters and stuff, and they can do whatever, but like they're not always going to be around. But there are other characters who can hold the weight, right? My concern going forward is that scale is going to tip so far in the opposite camp that like by the time we get to episode 6, we're just going to be watching and being like, when is Frankie or Rye going to show up?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's my biggest fear with this, is that I get very like One Punch Man vibes, not in terms of like the world, but in terms of literally Rye to Saitama, right? Like that they are so similar in that, right? That so far they could virtually annihilate anything. Rye doesn't even need to throw a punch. He just looks at them. You know what I mean? And just like mind screws them to death. So like, but that is one thing that, you know, I'm wary of. I don't know if we're definitely going to be there, because Frankenstein, I don't know if he's been going all out in this fight yet, but he seems to have his hands full. You know, it seems to be even so far with the guy with the purple, with Takeo in his drugged out form. So we'll have to see, but I agree. I think that's something where it's like, I'm wondering if like Rye and Frankie are going to take like a super backseat. Because if they don't take a backseat, the power scaling is weird, because now it's like your other characters are not even close to Ryan and Frankie, which means if you still want Ryan and Frankie to have a major part in the story without completely annihilating something, you need that enemy's power level to match theirs, which means that now the other characters are screwed, right? They have to do their own thing. Like, I think the beauty with something about One Punch Man as a comparison, well, number one, it's parody. So the point is that it's like, we know what we're doing, and that's why you're in it and you don't care, right? Whereas like Noblesse definitely has its elements of comedy, but I don't think that's their main, I don't think they're trying to go for that. Like, they do try and build suspense in that sense, but like One Punch Man does that so well, in my personal opinion, and especially in the first season, in a character like Genos, right? You can compare maybe Genos to someone like, you know, M-21, not motivations per se, but like, you know, power level and like how they compare against some of these enemies. And even though like, you know, Genos is going to lose for the most part, and you know, Saitama's going to come in and do that, like there's still this element of suspense, and like this fact that it's like, you know, Genos is like a very integral part to the story, and it's like hard for me to explain it in words, which is ironic because we're on a podcast right now, but just like the way I feel about it is that I didn't get that same vibe, and it's like, I know that's like a very like big cop out for me to just be like, well, I know in my head what I'm talking about, but like, well, it's hard for me to put into words. You get what I'm trying to say?
So I think at least what you're saying is that like with something like One Punch Man, and I agree at least with season 1, is like with Genos, you know, a lot of the at least after like, I want to say his first 2 fights, give or take, you know pretty much when he's going into a fight that he's gonna lose, but you're excited to see how much more he's built himself up since the last fight.
Yes.
So there's expectation in like, all right, Genos is going to lose, but like, I want to see what new shit he learned from the last loss that he took. And it's this idea of quite literally trial and error, right? Of like getting better through every loss and being able to put up that much more of a fight or stack up that much higher against the next villain or opponent, which is what I think made his fight with Goro that much more interesting, is that like, he seemed like in that, you know, that moment that he was like, either that he was going toe-to-toe with them or that he was going to win.
Yeah.
And then you think back to all the times that he's like lost and gotten back and built a new piece of equipment or learned a new technique or whatever. And it's like, it's progression. You see the progression, and like, granted, it's a little bit unfair given that we're episode 5, and we've seen enough of M-21 to be like, okay, or even, what's the young noble's name?
Regis. I don't know.
Of both of them to be like, okay, if the skill gap or cap with you guys isn't going to rise like it does with a character like Genos,
sure,
then like the moments that you guys are on screen, which is like most of the episode with the bad guys, is like less entertaining to watch.
Sure.
Like now I'm just waiting for either Frankie or Rye to roll up and you know, like just laser somebody in the face and call it a day. Because from the last fight you had to this fight, what you're doing like is there's no difference in your skill cap.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I think like kind of relating it to the overall point, and I think one of my main gripes, and I would assume based off what you said, you know, you're in agreement, is that in terms of suspense, thrill, hype, etc., there's a certain point you get to, right, where it's like you build, right? It's like almost like you're filling a balloon with helium and it's going to explode, right? Like that's the culmination, or you get to the top of the hill. And that's when it's like we're at the height of suspense and boom, Rye busts through the door or something like that. But there's something to be said about if you go there, but then if you don't hit us with that yet, you can't go higher. You have to just start going down, right? What goes up must come down. And I feel like that's what it was, because there was a legitimate suspense factor for me in the former half of that episode, in terms of like, okay, what's going to happen? Are they going to come here? Is M-21 going to sacrifice as well? But the fact that it was just like blatantly obvious that it was like a stalling maneuver, whether the characters were cognizant of it or not, right? Like in service of the plot, made it that it was like, okay, once we got to like the middle of the episode, we hit that point, and then the latter half of the episode for me suffered because it was just like, okay, I'm losing the suspense now. Like, is someone here going to die or not? And if they do at this point, I'm honestly starting to lose care, because it's like you just waited so long, right? It's just like, I don't know, it just seemed obvious. But I do have to say that in terms of M-21, that was probably my favorite part of the episode as a whole, was getting, I think he might be my favorite character now that I'm thinking of it, because I keep on thinking of it, and I find myself reverting back to this character every time that I have a good thing to say about the show, and being like, I like the development here. I like this. And I'm like, I much like this character, to be honest with you. Like, now, like I've said it enough times, like I genuinely think in terms of development, I do feel like M-21 has gotten some of the most development in the show so far. Even more so than our two high school students. Definitely more so than Rye Frankenstein as well. So yeah, I mean, right now I'm kind of standing M-21, and I have to say again, this episode was definitely my favorite part of this episode, in his, I guess, growth and, him coming to terms with, okay, because there was a part like you were explaining it before, where it's like, he can't even explain why he wants to help the kids, right? Because at the end of the day, he had a promise, and his promise was, to fulfill to M-24 and the other guys that unfortunately were, killed in these experiments, to find out his real name, because that holds so much significance to him. Sure, he's not just a subject anymore. He's a person. He's a real boy. But, like that. So that's my point. So like him letting go of that dream temporarily or indefinitely, in order to help these people that have helped him and to protect humanity, rather than going for that means. Like, it was almost a signification that it's like, I don't need a name necessarily. Like, I don't need my name necessarily to choose to do good. At least that's how I interpreted it. And he could still go for this goal, but it was noble of him because in his head, he's like, I'm probably going to die. Right. And it's still to be seen if he does or not. I'm assuming he doesn't, but like, that's the, the sacrifice he was willing to make. And to me, that was my favorite part of this episode in general. It was nice to see those flashbacks and the internal struggle he was going through of trying to like hold it up. I do find it funny right off the rip how like blatantly obvious he was with it, when like Reggie's would look at him and he'd be like, and he'd like look away. And it's like, if I was like sharking them, I'd be like, why are you acting so viscerally to like him looking at you? Like, you either know him or you don't. You'd be indifferent, right?
But like, so
it's funny.
To my point, and I do want to get to my positives, but real quick, it's like something like that. The whole setup here of like, let's interrogate them. Who's really knows what here and who is helping them? Like, let's find out. Feels like just a scene of like a bunch of high schoolers that don't know how to act in a play, because it's like you said, you see that and it's like, oh, do you got a thing with these kids? Like, are you fond of them? And then M-21's like, no, not at all. And you're like, oh, really? And just cut one of the heads off, and you're like, so you don't, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like,
yeah.
in interrogation, if your goal here is to get information, I feel like that's what you would do.
Yeah.
And also, again, with this team, this D team, who is so well established, and it's said that like they are such a cohesive unit because they work well together. They all are able to utilize their skills.
Sure.
Like, I feel like you all would be able to work like that under any situation.
Yeah.
And instead, it just felt like everybody was like, well, I want you to do this, but don't do it yet because we're not, we're still 10 minutes into the episode.
Sure.
But I do agree that M-21's moments and M-21 as a character, to be honest, are definitely some of my standouts amongst the 5 episodes that we've seen. And I feel like most of it is because the whole thing with this like human, human, not like real person, test subject, meta superhumans, whatever. It obviously, so that's part of the weight here, right, for M-21, but like for a lot of the characters who aren't just regular normal people, it's like, who are you? Are you worth anything if you're not like a super meta human or whatever? And a lot of seeing them coming at the jump with him and his boy M-24, it was like, okay, these guys were the bad guys right at first. They're coming in and, you know, fucking people up and whatever. But it's like, you don't, once you get a little bit of like a deeper dive into the organization, I guess, or even some of the other members, like Jake and, do you remember the woman's name?
I don't, off the top of my head.
The woman, his partner, you realize that it's like M21 and M24 are like are not bad. You know what I mean? Like they're in this organization, but like of the organization, they're pretty nice dudes and pretty chill dudes compared to some of the other people here.
Yeah.
So it's like once you see, then you get a more of their backstory, and then like of course the moment with M24 really solidifies it. Like M21 is now taking this step to like find a sense of identity, right? Find out who he is, what his purpose is for living, and clearly through episodes 2 through 4, like that, like you said, that's his goal. That's his like his main objective. Like that's the thing he's looking and staring down towards. But like this moment is so nice for him because it gives him flexibility now in that search or in that light of like, all right, just because I don't know who I am, like doesn't mean I can't make choices for myself, or I can't act on my feelings at all, right? Like he couldn't even explain really why he felt the way he did or why he needed to protect these kids, but he did know why, and him making the decision to be like, all right, I am going to like all of that shit be damned. Like these kids are in danger and I like these kids. I'm going to help them out. Like it's such a great character moment. It's such a great moment in that, you know, in the pool of everything that happened in this episode. And I think that going forward, it's going to do a lot for M21 as far as opening up again, like just the opportunity for that character where he can be integrated in. And hopefully, like we were saying before, like with the power scaling, like I'd like to see, you know, whether, I don't know, like M21 specifically, because I kind of think that like him being because again, you know, not to like pick one anime and just sort of like stack them up against each other, but like in One Punch Man, someone like Moomin Rider, right, where it's like this dude can't do anything, right? Like he's not a hero, he's not a strong hero. But that moment with him fighting the Sea King is one of the most referred to moments throughout One Punch Man, and like something about seeing a character who is innately weaker and who like knows that he's probably gonna die if he sticks up and fights, but like choosing to do that anyway, like hits all the time. It's 100% more engaging than when Rai walks in. And don't get me wrong, if you do that right with building up suspense, like they did in that scene from One Punch Man, where like just as Moomin Rider's about to eat it, Saitama walks in and he's like, you did it. You know what I mean? Like that moment, if you complement that with like M21 and Rai, but the second we sort of used Regis, it like kind of muddied up the playing field here, and then the D team started turning on each other when it was like Shark would eat a pill and he's like, nah, I'm super strong, and Regis like, just kidding, you're still actually ass, and then like beats his ass, and then the leader comes around and he's like, no, actually we're not really like a team, these guys are all just food for me, I'm just gonna eat. And it's like, all right, what is like the dynamic here has been like, I feel like wrung out and like slapped around, and nobody knows. It's like so hard to pin down what any character other than like, you know, arguably Rai and Frankie really feel about like what's going on here. And it was just, but again, we went pretty hard on the negatives here. Like the positively, I do really like M21's moments in here, and I do like, my only question going forward, I guess leaning a bit more into predictions, is like with the people like you and like the regular students, it's like, what is the point of having them here? Because I swear to God, man, if we go another 10 episodes or however long we go into this, and it's just like a ring around the rosy of these kids getting kidnapped and like getting saved again, like I'm not going to be a happy nigga. I'm just not. And like, I hope that either these kids get some skill, weapon, tool, perk, something, where they're all end up being kids in the chair, something that gives them like pertinence and relevancy to, you know, engaging with Rai and Frankie, or they just go home and like don't like go and come back. Because it's like, again, fool me once, shame on, like we're doing this thing where it's like they're getting kidnapped, and this isn't the first time it's happened, already in the 5 episodes, and it's like, if we roll around to like the 8th time it's happened, it's like, I'm gonna be upset.
I don't blame you either. I'm like, to harken back what you said, you know, your first thing with M21 and how Regis kind of like muddied that up. I feel like a lot of it is, you know, robbing M21 of some of the agency, you know, and it's like kind of pulling away from that moment and having some of the other characters and whatever. And it's like the impactful moment there is the fact that M21, in spite of his dream, decides to go against it and potentially die for people that took him in, but at the end of the day, like, he doesn't necessarily owe allegiance to, right? He doesn't owe it to anyone, but he's like, I can't get over this feeling. Like, I have to do it. Something's compelling me. And that's the part that hits. So, like, when there's the, like the thing with like Regis, and then like, it's like, then the other teammates are not like going along with the plan. And it's like, whatever, that's what kind of dumbs down that should be impactful moment there. So to, say what, to agree with what you were saying initially, was something. And then, I agree with the kids in the school. That was a thought I had even reacting to this episode, that I'm like, if I'm not mistaken, this might be like the third time they were either kidnapped or like in some sort of situation. Because if I'm not mistaken, M21 and M24 do it the first time. And then Jake does it as well, if I'm not mistaken. And now this time, so that's 3 times that they've done nothing but get kidnapped, which is interesting too, because it's like, what is it? Is pretty damn impressive for a person, But again, I think it just goes to this whole, and we'll have to wait and see where it's like where the power scaling lines up, where it's like, okay, do we want to implement Rye and Frankie into this plot? And have them have like sick fights, and if so, are we willing to sacrifice some of the lower end, or are we going to have it so like that the lower end gets to shine? Rye comes in with this One Punch Man type vibe, like they've been doing, but it's like if you're going to do that, you have to give these lesser characters their time to shine in their character development, in their in their goals, their motivations, etc. Because we full well know that like you is not going to be able to fight any of these things toe to toe unless they're like a low ranking vampire or noble or whatever the hell, you know what I'm saying? It's just like this weird thing that they like, I just hope they don't corner themselves, or if they do choose to corner themselves, they pick the right corner, if that makes sense. But go ahead.
I do. So the last thing that I really like have to want to say is that like, I do understand that like, this is inherently like a different kind of show, right? So this isn't something like God of High School where it's like action, boom, 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 back to back. And it's not even something like Tower of God where like the action is woven into like the plot here. It's like a lot of that stuff takes a back seat in something like Noblesse, and I get that because there's a certain kind of focus on like character and interactions and stuff that you're not gonna find in like your typical, I guess, like shonen or really even any anime that has fighting in it. But my thing with this is that like there's so many characters in it that like do either revolve around or like have something to do with like the superpower fighting stuff, that like to say that this isn't about this, there's like a weird emphasis on it. And again, I'm speaking more to the anime than like Noblesse as a story. For me, because it's like, okay, I get if like you and like the kids and anybody who's not a metahuman, if their role is to be like the human element here, right? It's like Rye and Frankie and M-21 and all them who have the powers, like they can run around the city and fight vampires and goblins and demons all day, but it's like you and them are the ones who are coming into that circle and being like, hey guys, like let's, we're going to show you what it means to like be people. I mean, like Rye all the time, in his stay here since he's woken up, has made remarks and claims about like how interesting and intriguing finds humanity. And he's like, well, these people are like really something different. And they're not what I remember from when I last went to sleep. And like, I get it if that's their goal here, but there has to be a better way or different way, quite frankly, of just integrating them into this story then, other than like, they get kidnapped and then like they're supposed to be the fodder hostage that makes the superpowered people be like, oh, well, the human thing here would be to sacrifice myself to save the kids. And it's like, because then they're just bait. And like, that's nowhere near as engaging as it get. One of my favorite moments actually from of the episodes we've seen so far is when M-21 first integrates into, or like first comes to stay at Frankie, with Frankie and Rye. And it's this moment of like, they even make a remark on it here. I think Regis is the one who says something about it, where he's like, don't think that just because there is a few moments of peace that like, you know what I mean? Like everything is fine and we're always going to be good. And it's like, I feel like those moments of peace kind of tell like a different story with at least the non-human characters than these moments of like chaos or whatever. Cause it's like in those moments of the former that I mentioned, they're good. Like they have a primary focus here and a point. Like the point being here is to be like, let's eat lunch together. Let me show you guys what humans do. Yeah. Let me show you guys what it means to feel and be a human. But in these moments of chaos, they now become virtually useless, right? I mean, again, like you for a human is like remarkably athletic and strong and whatever, but he's not going toe to toe, and he's not even really going to fight or stand a chance against any of these like actual demons at this power level, let alone I'm expecting, the other people we meet to be even stronger. So like, it just becomes a thing of like, if they're only good in this part of the show, but like actually detracting away, at least in my opinion, from like the enjoyment of this other part of the show, like the balance is off, and I hope at least going in the future of episodes that we find a way to, correct that or fix it.
Yeah, I agree. So getting into some predictions / the very tail end of the episode here, Commander, whose name evades me, but I have the slight feeling that he's not going to be around much longer. I could be wrong on that. It might be like some stalemate type thing, and then he escapes, and like he might be the main antagonist, right? Because they said anyone who has the ability to absorb other people and get stronger, so long as they live, has the ability to then re-challenge you later, provided they've absorbed enough people. So he might not be gone for long, but I'm assuming he's not winning this fight with Rai coming in, just because it's Rai. At least where we are right now. But it is interesting that, at the end he's like, okay, really the plan here was to absorb all of you once you take the drug. So I think that is interesting, and it kind of, I'm not giving it a full pass, but slightly is a pass as to why he lets shit hit the fan for as long as it did in this whole ridiculous squabble, because I'm assuming it's like, okay, I need you guys to be pushed to a limit where you feel like it's a necessity to take the drug, and then I do it. I mean, realistically, again, being a cynic, being a critic here, and being like completely not in the rules of anime, theoretically you are their commander, so you could be like, Shark, pop a pill real quick, and then destroy him. I don't think you had to go that far just to make him pop the pill, personally, but I'll give it a slight pass in that I'm assuming that's why he let it go for as long as it did. And he absorbs them, right? So it's like, we see that this organization is not, and again, that kind of explains to me why the team is so disjointed as of right now. And if I had to guess, and I hope I'm right on this, that a lot of these people that are recruited is either against their own will or they have something holding over their head, because the fact that Takeo and Tao switch literally within an hour, you know what I mean? Like switch allegiances virtually, is like, where was your allegiance? Did you even have allegiance to begin with? Like you didn't have a problem. Like
this was like a part-time job, not a career.
Exactly. Or like, are they holding something over your head and now's your chance? And and now, especially since the commander's like, I'm going to absorb all of you. That's a pretty good reason for you to get the hell out of there and run. So I hope I'm right in that respect, that it's like this organization is like, okay, we don't really give a damn about like the team-oriented things. It's really about you fulfilling said missions, and then when your usefulness has been spent, we are using you in service of the next big upgrade. So whether it be the leader of Team D, or maybe he's fodder for someone else, and once they get to the end, it's like this ridiculous, meta, crazy human thing that just annihilates everyone because he's absorbed the souls, whatever the hell. You get the point. So, but yeah, so he's absorbs Shark at that moment, and it seems that he is like ridiculously strong in this moment. So this is going to be a job for Rai type thing. We're going to see how this goes. Like I said, I don't think he's coming out of this one the victor. Whether he lives or dies could be up in the air. If he lives, I think it's going to be I'll be back type thing. And we'll see what happens there. But I do think, and I don't think. All right, hang on. This might be a slight spoiler. I'm giving you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay. I'm assuming, also based off of this Noblesse wiki page with the character names on there, it says main characters include Rai, Frankenstein, Sierra, Takeo, Regis, Tao, and M-21.
You went to the wiki.
So that gives me a strong inclination that Tao and Takeo are going to live this and join their squad, because it says they are the main characters. I'm like, why would you exclude the other people? So sorry about that. Slight spoiler.
Damn.
Over. But so that's my prediction, that they're going to make it out of here, which, to be honest, isn't even that much of a spoiler, because it seemed pretty, I don't know, the way the show is going, it seemed pretty easy to put context clues together to be like, oh, okay, this person wants to do a good thing, and like they weren't really in this from the beginning, so it would only make sense that they switch allegiances at that point. But I do assume that like Hammer's gone, that like the three people of the squad are gone, the leader, Shark, Hammer, and then those two, might join up with the squad or whatever, do their own thing, and go from there. But in terms of what we see next, I think that there's going to be, okay, it's going to be incremental increase through the ranks of the organization, right? Team D's wiped out. Who's next, right? Who's our next big thing? If this is a hierarchy of who's, the strongest. And then also from there, potentially the inclusion of nobles, like vampires or whatever, but that are evil, right? We see that one woman in the OP who, I don't know, seems like she's got subjects and like the whole like evil vampire in a castle thing rather than, like your reverse of it. So I'm assuming that's the next thing that we jump into. Also, not to mention that the nobles just seem to be so much more powerful at base level than the metahumans until the metahumans like juice up one of their big dudes. So anyway, those are my predictions. Zay, what do you got?
So I think that I kind of agree, and again, even without the wiki, it's like it's pretty feasible, let's just say, to assume that the people who are very like wishy-washy about being on Team D or like about doing those things are probably going to end up at the very least getting to stay alive, but at the very best like getting to join the squad here and squad up with Ryan and everybody. But I feel like that's fine. It does kind of end up getting into a thing of like what you were saying at the beginning where it's like, okay, when do we like cut off the application list here? And like, does everybody who has to change a heart just get to join the crew? Because again, it's quite a cast of characters we have to establish. And, if we've learned anything about this discussion here, it's, keep it small and focus on as many as do whatever you want with these characters, or keep it large, but give everybody some time. So we'll see. Time will tell, I guess. But I am also predicting that the leader here, it's like, whether he makes it out or whether he lives by means of escaping or just doesn't live, he's up against Rye. So there's only two options. It's either he runs away or dies. I don't see him beating Rye because I believe like from the whole dynamic here that we're looking at is that like Rye is the Noblesse, right? Which is like this sort of like trump card or one that tops everything. That's why everybody's looking for this coffin and shit. Sure. So like, really, I mean, like we have Frankie, who I believe is probably the other competent fighter or whatever metahuman in the group here. But I feel like it's gonna be like Frankie and Rye, and like to be honest, how much the others are gonna be actually contribute to this fight, especially ongoing once we start to meet some of the nobles and all that stuff. I can't really tell, right? Because like I said, even now in episode 5, I'm already seeing cracks in this. Like, okay, you've got this cast here, but it's kind of just Frankie and Rye. And, if you want to make an episode about M-21 or Regis or whoever, let them have some scuffle. But, like, Rye is going to come in to save them, and Frankie, or it's going to, so I'm going forward, I think we're going to see, obviously, more of the organization, because I also think the D team, as whatever, as they have been, I think they are still pretty, like, small in comparison, like of people that we can meet, and obviously, like we said, there's nobles, but I think there's people in between. So I'm excited to see more of the organization and what they're like, and I'm just sort of excited for like this to sort of like really kick off. You know what I mean? Like I feel like again, I don't know how the story goes in terms of like pacing and when characters meet who, but like for us to get out of like these people from the organization, like they sent this group this time, or like villains of the week kind of thing, instead of like, all right, let's get into like why people want the Noblesse, and like let's get into like what that means, and like what is Rye like what, because right now it's been a lot of like Frankie and Rye are just kind of hanging out and like gathering information, but it's like, what is the point of this, right? Like what are you guys planning to do as some sort of like counterattack or counter assault to the people? Like, do they know, like, you know what I mean? I want to get into more of, I guess, like the core story elements. So I'm hoping that we'll get a lot of that. Like I said, the characters, I think, most of everybody who's alive now, with the exception of the leader, I think is subject to staying alive, and Shark. Because he's already dead. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much what I think is going to happen. And like I said, I really going forward, I kind of I hope that we get a little bit more cohesiveness in terms of the pacing and like the plot and the characters. Because again, I want to emphasize, like, I do love most of these characters. But it just sucks that much more than when, like, they get shafted, or like somebody doesn't get, somebody's character moment or whatever gets undermined by, somebody else or whatever. And like, don't get me wrong, Ryan and Frankie are fantastic. But if that's the show, what is everybody else doing? Yeah. So that's my thing. Yeah.
I will say though, one, positive note ending off, not that it was overwhelming, like it was good. I do love the little comedic moments at the end.
Yeah,
And
of
if
course,
you guys
of course.
aren't watching after the credits, you need to, because those are some sneaks into Rye and like his little quirky things that he does, and which was interesting because he goes to like pull something out of his pocket, and we're like, what the hell was that? Right? It's like this big thing, and then you find out that it's literally like dried ramen in the thing, which that seems gross just right off the rip. Like, do people eat ramen like that?
So Gavin and I did a stream last week.
Yeah.
Where I proclaimed my knowledge of ramen and ways to consume it. Of one way of which I've consumed it has been straight raw as a package.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, man. It tastes just like crackers, basically.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never done it.
Gavin tried to food shame me on stream, and everybody was like, Gavin, knock it off. So thanks for that. But I don't know. He did. I was like, that happened, and I was like, it's a man of culture. He knows what's up. He's like, I don't have time to cook this, but I want ramen.
No, it's fair. I've never done it. So I was like, could that be really that enjoyable? But whatever. Interesting. You know, it's just funny to see these little quirky things. Obviously gives it a comedic element, which is something that I do appreciate each and every time. But anyway, folks, bit of a long one today, but those were our thoughts. We had a couple episodes to catch up on, being that we haven't had discussions on episodes 2 through 4 yet. So this was kind of our long time coming thing. It was our first reaction again today. If you haven't seen our reaction video to this, we posted it earlier today. So you definitely want to go check that out. We're really
100%.
excited to be able to start doing reaction videos again. So we'll be incrementally releasing those throughout the week, and Noblesse ones will hopefully be weekly, provided that the copyright overlords don't slam their fist down on top of us and ruin the fun for everybody else. But I think we will be okay. I'm hoping we will be okay. Regardless, definitely go check out that video. Again, if you guys enjoyed the content today, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, sharing with your friends, and commenting your thoughts down below. What did you think of this episode? What do you think of Noblesse as a whole? And what did you think of our discussion, as long as you are civil? But we love you all. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, we'll catch you on the flip. Peace.
Peace.
Ninjas are samurais, blazing the kunais. Find me in the leaf of the cloud, screaming out Bankai. We just some ghouls though, who like seeing parts fly.